Alrighty, welcome back everyone. We just talked about the Clemson-Texas game, one of those games that just feels like something weird is going to happen, right? That Texas team has not been very good at pulling away from anyone. Clemson's very good as an underdog, just feels like one of those moments. But I am going to go with Texas. I am going to lean the Longhorns on that one, especially their defense. Oh, excuse me. But let's jump into the big one. Let's jump into the one that everyone has been very excited for, that has really gotten Twitter. Oh, excuse me. That has really gotten Twitter very mad at each other. There is a lot of Ohio State fans, a lot of Tennessee fans that are very much going after each other right now, and that's what this time of the year is about, right? As long as people don't get too aggressive, as long as people don't get too far in the weeds, we're having a good time. We're talking a little bit of trash up to a huge game up there in Columbus, and we got to start with the elephant in the room. It is Ryan Day's game. If he wins this game, congratulations. You are still the Ohio State head coach, and frankly, you might be going into next year, depending based on everything else happening in the coaching cycle. You might be safe if you just win this one. You got to win this one. You lose this one, you're probably fired on Sunday, and then the coaching carousel blows up overnight. So a lot of different things to kind of keep in mind here, a lot of different things that will come into play, and it's got to be a thing on the back of his mind. You got to wonder just how much is he thinking about that, how much will it affect the way that he goes about business, and so many of the questions that we have around this Ohio State team are more mental and grandiose than they are physical things on the football field. So it's really hard to get a beat on what Ohio State needs to do in this game. The biggest thing that I can tell is go away from what you were doing against Michigan. Just trust who you are. And who you are is those special wide receivers. Who you are is Jeremiah Smith. Who you are is Emeka Egbuka. Who you are is the guys that can go up and make plays that we have never seen in the sport. Trust those guys to go make those plays. This is a very good back end, especially Jermod McCoy, which we'll talk about here in a second. But at the end of the day, you got to play your game. You cannot go away from this season trying to be the team that pounds the rock, goes really aggressive, is the aggressor. You're not that team. That's just not the way you're built. Trust the wide receivers on the outside, and that's going to be one of the bigger things in this game. The other bigger thing where if you want to trust those wide receivers, you need protection. And with that guy on the other side, it's very, very hard to get consistent protection. He is an absolute nightmare to deal with. It has, I think, 7.5 sacks on the year. The entire team has 29 sacks on the year. It is going to be a load for this offensive line to deal with. An offensive line that has two starters out, has a guy over on the left tackle position that Donovan Jackson has kicked out and played relatively good football, had a couple of tough moments against Michigan, but considering he was kicking out to tackle for the first time in his life, he's played really good football. And then you do have Austin Sareveld, you do have Carson Hinsman on the interior taking over for Seth McLaughlin, who ended up being the Remington Award winner. It's a load to deal with. I can promise you that. And it's not just, this pass rush. It's not just James Pierce Jr. It's Bryson Eason on the inside. He's an absolute nightmare to move. And that run game, at least going north and south, probably going to have a pretty tough time. So Ohio State cannot be searching for answers in this game. They have to be coming into this one with a very, very clear game plan, and it's got to be very different than the one that they employed against Michigan. I can almost promise you that. So for Ohio State, the big thing to watch here is Tennessee has really struggled to throw the ball downfield. They've struggled to do the thing that makes this offense not only good, but absolutely impossible to stop. When you have Dylan Sampson, you're going to be really hard to stop. You are going to be a good offense. You are going to be one that's going to be able to put points on the board. If you open this part of the game up, if you get a couple of deep shots per game from Nico Iamaleava, they can win the national title. That is how good this offense can look. That's how good that defense is, just plain and simple. But Dylan Sampson, if you can slow him down, you're going to have a better chance to slow this part of it down, because you get him in a situation where he has to force some of these balls, where he has to make all the plays in the world. He is going to miss some of them. He has missed a lot of big-time plays down the field throughout this year, and if Nico is not given a little bit of a run game, if he's not given the protection that he very much needs, he's going to start forcing balls. That's what young kids do in these big-time moments, where this is going to be the toughest place he's played since he played at Georgia a little bit ago. It was a solid game from him. Not necessarily saying he played bad, but you could feel it. There was a little bit of energy in that building that he was a little bit new to, and it's going to be the same exact thing in this one, especially with all of the things around it. And you talk about kind of the quarterback battle as you head into this one. Will Howard has played really good football pretty much the entire year. He needs a bounce back game after that Michigan game where it looked really ugly. He missed a lot of guys. He did not see the field very well, and I think a lot of that had to do with the way that they were calling plays, but a lot of that had to do with him just missing spots, and he cannot do that because you have guys on the back end of Penn State or of Tennessee that maybe aren't the most elite in the world. They're going to be able to make some plays. I can absolutely promise you that. So Will Howard has to be a factor with his legs. Nico can absolutely move as well. Which one of these quarterbacks can play the cleaner game is what it comes down to for me. I know that Nico is the more physically talented quarterback. That does not need to be told to me. That is very, very abundantly clear. The question I do have is, does Ohio State have the advantages at receiver and cornerback to take advantage of those the way they want to, or is Nico going to be one of those guys that just steps up to the moment, takes advantage of some of the openings that he does have, and then that run game just kind of takes him to the victory with Dylan Sampson? And then we got to talk about the O-line. We talked about how tough of a battle it's going to be. This will decide the game, plain and simple. How well that interior offensive line plays for Ohio State will be the decider between them losing in the first round or possibly winning a national title. That is how important this group is, and it could be the very best game of the entire CFP. Two elite programs, two elite teams going at each other in one of the best places in the entire sport in the horseshoe. And then we get to see if we get a rematch between Ohio State and Oregon, or we get a little Tennessee-Oregon, a little bit of wrench thrown into the works, and some fun to be had in that one as well. But players to watch, it's the guy. Dylan Sampson is an absolute monster on this team, and he is one of the best running backs in the entire country. He is a guy that can take over this game if Ohio State lets him. Obviously, have been a very, very good rush defense pretty much the entirety of the year. You're going to have to worry about that deep ball more than you did against Michigan. So you can't pin guys in nearly as much. You can't put as many guys into the box. You can't make sure that you're taking care of the run because what's Davis Warren going to do? Well, Nico is going to be able to do a ton. I can almost promise you that. So you're going to have to make sure that you handle this guy. You keep this guy under wraps, you're going to win this game. You don't keep this guy under wraps, then just about everything else opens up for this offense, and you're probably going to get run out of this building. Jermod McCoy, very talented corner for Tennessee, one of the all-SEC players, and definitely a guy that can make a ton of plays in this game. Definitely a guy that's going to be seeing a lot of number 4, a lot of Jeremiah Smith in this game for this player, and he's capable of handling it. There's no doubt about that. Did a great job against Ryan Williams earlier this year, but at the end of the day, there's going to be some plays to be made. There's going to be some big-time plays down the field that he is going to have to make, and if he doesn't, it's going to be number 4 coming down with it, and it's going to be a huge play and a huge momentum boost for Ohio State. TreVeyon Henderson is the guy that I thought he was the most important in the Michigan game. I didn't think he was utilized correctly in the Michigan game. Now he's the most important guy in this one. Just got to hope that he's utilized correctly because he is the guy to me that you can do extended run game stuff with. You can throw swing passes, you can throw screens, you can do a lot of stuff with him that get this defense spread out, that get that defensive line thinking about, well, if TreVeyon Henderson leaves the backfield, maybe James Pierce Jr. has to fall out into the flat just a little bit to make sure that he can cover him on the idea that he would possibly take the ball. And then you can hand the ball to Quinshon Judkins and let him get gone for a big-time touchdown. So it's really a count and mouse game, and I really do think these two running backs, having them both on the field at the same time, can open up things in this defense that are going to be very, very tough to open up. Otherwise, I think TreVeyon Henderson is one of the most important players really for the rest of the season for Ohio State, just to get Will Howard in a groove and make some really special plays after the catch from the running back position. And then Cody Simon. And I do this plainly because he is the leader of this defense. He is the guy that is going to be calling out all the plays. He is the guy that has been in this program for a very long time. He wants to win this game. He fully understands everything that is going into this game. He's been a part of a lot of those losses to Michigan. He's been a part of a lot of the people questioning what Ryan Day is doing and wanting his job and all of that different type of stuff. He wants to go out and prove a point. So I could talk about, the fact that he's going to have to deal with Dylan Sampson. He's going to have to deal with Nico Imaliava as a running threat. The reality is, it's just about the mentality of this kid. I think he's coming in as aggressive as you could possibly come into this game, and he's going to be huge one way or the other. Keys to the game for Tennessee, use that mismatch up front. There's no doubt in my mind that Tennessee's D-line is going to be too much for Ohio State's O-line. Now, what is the moniker there? How much is too much? Is it they get home 7 times for 7 sacks, 10.5 tackles for loss, they totally dominate? Or is it they get home 3 times for 3 sacks and they get 4 tackles for loss? They're not necessarily living in the backfield. They're going to make their plays. I absolutely promise you that. Ohio State's O-line just needs to hold up enough, just needs to make sure that they can get the ball out to these incredible playmakers on the outside and then make some plays in open field away from this aggressive D-line. And then early rhythm for Nico, whatever that looks like. He's very comfortable running the football. Maybe you put together a couple of designed runs early. Maybe you put together a couple of slants that he's comfortable throwing. Whatever that looks like for him. Get this guy into a groove, because as much as pretty much anyone in the country, as far as I'm concerned, he is a rhythm thrower. He is a confidence thrower. If you give him a couple that are very, very easy to start, that he can really get his juices flowing, get his confidence going, he is going to be an absolute problem down the stretch of this game, throwing into windows that you do not even see. That is how talented of a thrower he is. You got to get him rolling before you make him make those throws. And then throw the first punch. Ohio State is questioning a lot of things. Even the guys that say that they are totally past the Michigan game, they're not worrying about it right now, they're worrying about it just a little bit. I can absolutely promise you that. So throw the first punch. Get up 7-0, 14-0. I promise you that crowd will be taken out of it just a little bit, and some of the guys on that other sideline might be taken out of it just a little bit. For Ohio State, stretch the field. This D-line is going to be an absolute nightmare to deal with. You have better athletes on the outside. Utilize those guys. Get it to Emeka Egbuka as quickly as possible. Throw it up to Jeremiah Smith for 50-50 balls. Get Carnell Tate out on the outside. Make sure that you get Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins running outside zone instead of right into the teeth of this defense. Make the plays on the outside that you need to make, because that's where you have the big-time advantage in this game, where you have the advantage in just about every game you're going to play is those wide receivers against whoever else is on the other side. Just use those guys. They are going to be the thing that takes you to a national title. It's going to be the thing that takes you to a win here. And then force Nico to beat you. As crazy as it sounds, I love Nico Iamaleava. I think he's a very talented quarterback that will probably end up being one of the best quarterbacks in Tennessee history when it's all said and done. The reality is he's been really off the mark for the majority of the year. He was solid during against Vandy, made a couple of big-time plays, but he has struggled. There's no doubt about that. So if Ohio State, if you can slow Dylan Sampson, slow that run game, you're in really good shape, because at the end of the day, if the only offense is those couple of big-time plays down the field, you could probably even live with that if that run game is being totally stifled. And then use the noise. It's something that Ohio State has become very, very used to using throughout the years because of that Michigan game. But at the end of the day, you want that rematch with Oregon. You want everyone to stop talking about Ryan Day's future, to stop talking about all the craziness around that program. You got to win this one. You got to use every ounce of energy that you have, every ounce of disrespect that you can find, and unleash it out there on the field. And I've looked at this game every which way. I've thought about it a number of different times. I've changed my pick a couple of times, but I keep finding myself back to this one very, very specific thing. That Tennessee D-line is just too much. It's better than that Michigan D-line, and I saw what that Michigan D-line did to Ohio State. I understand that Ohio State will attack this a little bit differently. I don't think it will change it nearly enough. I don't think Will Howard will be able to make the plays that he needs to. I think the run game for Tennessee, I think the defense for Tennessee will just be too much. So I am going to go Tennessee to win this one. I don't think Ohio State moves on to the next round. I do think Ryan Day is probably fired on Sunday. That's just the way that I see it right now. I can't promise that. I think he's a fantastic coach, and if they were to keep him, I wouldn't necessarily be against that. I know a lot of people would. I wouldn't necessarily, go against them too aggressively on that. But that's just the way that I see this unfolding. I see Tennessee getting a win, one of those wins that makes you feel like this team just doesn't handle physicality very well, and then a lot of people behind closed doors are asking a lot of big-time questions. So we'll see what happens. The fallout will be incredible to watch, and not incredible. Obviously, it's not incredible that Ryan Day would possibly be losing his job, but it'll be interesting to watch, probably the better way to put that, and we'll see what happens in the coaching carousel after that. But let's take our last break, and when we come back, let's just talk about all the bowl games going into this weekend, and then we will be back on Friday to break down all of the craziness. But stick with us, and we'll be right back with all those bowl games.